Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Fiber Talk webinar. My name is Rusafi Alam and I'm the manager of FTTH Council Asia Pacific. Since you already know that our today's webinar will be focused on 2022 FTTH Council APAC Innovation Panorama webinar. We in this first part of this webinar series, we will be unveiling our very new Asia Pacific Innovation Panorama 2022 report. For the first time, we have changed our scope for this panorama report based on our members' review to give our members more value to it. And today we will unveil the 5G and IoT mini panorama report in this webinar. So the report will be presented by Roland Montagna, Principal Analyst of Broadband and FTTX at IDATE, and he will be presenting the complete report. So Roland has long expertise on the global broadband and FTTX market, and he will be now presenting the report. Before that, just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them into the question box in your go-to control panel. I will bring them up after the presentation at the end. And also for you, today's report will be shared in a booklet form. You can just go to the handout section and find the report as a booklet. So without much ado, I will now hand over to Roland for the part of his. Please welcome Roland.
Thank you very much, Rusafi, for your kind introduction. My name is Roland Montagne, and I'm very pleased to present the part one of the innovation report we handled this year for the FTTH Council APAC. We will have today two subjects to be shared with you. One is the status of 5G deployment in the APAC region. And the second one is the status of IoT deployment in the APAC region. So let me start first with the 5G mini panorama in the APAC region. But I would like first to share with you some key facts when we talk about 5G. We are now, after 3 years after the first launch that happened in 2018 by a small number of players. South Korea was one of the first countries to benefit from full 5G in this regard. And 2020 has been the year of 5G confirmation with many commercial launches. Today, we are more or less more than 50 countries enjoying commercial 5G services. The main technology today being deployed is non-standalone, means using the current core network of 4G. We have nevertheless some first standalone network emerging. The idea of the players is really to shorten time to market, to enable more bandwidth and intensive services to the customers. That's why the NSA architecture has been used, but enabling new spectrum to be used for a better usage. In terms of spectrum, most commercial 5G networks today are using mid-band frequency around 3.5 gigahertz. Nevertheless, there is some millimeter waves or low frequency also roll out. And we have the introduction of dynamic spectrum sharing to take advantage of low frequencies. Globally, we can say that 5G adoption is faster than the previous generation. We have seen some markets enjoying rapid adoption. There is a subscriber uptake particularly impressive in Asia Pac, in countries such as China and South Korea. Indeed, at the end of last year, these two countries reached 12% and 26% respectively in terms of 5G penetration. Of course, the availability of subsidized smartphone and cheap pricing plan is a clear advantage to accelerate adoption. So APAC, we really have the main share of 5G subscription and revenue stream between, we think, 2020 and 2026. There will be a volume effect. There is still a volume effect in China and India should come to push Asia Pac 5G subscription exceeding a 1 billion mark subscriber park, we believe, in early next year. Indeed, by 2021, China already accounts for the majority of ASEAN 5G subscription, but this share of China should decline over the next 5 years. We know that 5G supports a variety of use cases. Of course, the main one today is eMBB, but other services should appear on the next few years. There is some potential to generate as much global growth in vertical, in industry vertical. So 5G will not give just more bandwidth, but it expects to sustain and to drive the next industrial revolution, and also to connect a billion of objects in the midterm. Today, volume is still the main segmentation criteria for 5G plans, but of course, innovation and quality of service will gain momentum in the near future. Here we are in Asia Pacific in terms of 5G commercial launches. There is 15 countries today with commercial availabilities. Here, painted in blue, you have the list of those countries in the first box. There is expected 5G launch also in the month to come, like in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, in Malaysia, Indonesia, India has been already launched, Vietnam, and Bangladesh and Pakistan should follow in 2023. If we are looking at the subscriber numbers, well, it is clear that China is leading the game by far. We have in China the three national players forming the top three, the leader being China Mobile, followed by China Telecom and China Unicom. You have also in the top leading players, players such as SKT, KT, NTT Docomo is there, LG, U Plus is there, SoftBank is there, Singtel also is in this top list, and also CK Hutchinson from Hong Kong is there. And you see, in terms of leading countries by subscribers, the huge domination of China being really out of scope, followed by USA, Japan, but also South Korea in the top leading countries, but in lowest volume, you have also Thailand and Taiwan being there. Globally, in the APAC region, 5G coverage is increasingly steadily. We have a major 5G deployment in China, Japan, and South Korea. And you have here the detail of this coverage milestone in the three countries. Launch date for the three operators in China has been November 2019. And you see the huge number of base stations already deployed with each players nearly half billion or half million, sorry, of base station being deployed for each player in China. And you already know the number of subscribers for each player in China. Japan, with three players at the beginning of deployment, NTT Docomo, KDDI, and SoftBank started in March 2020. We have today nearly 60 major cities in Japan being covered. We expect in quite quickly 60% of the population being covered in Japan. And the objective is to cover more than 90% of the population in the next 5 years, so at the horizon of 2025, with existing spectrum, but also with the 28 gigahertz spectrum. South Korea also is one of the leaders with the three operators starting quite early the deployment, KT, LG, and SK Telecom. Today, it's a breaking record in the world, I would say. Over 90% of the population is already covered in Seoul, in Korea. The number of 5G base stations representing 11% of the total base station, and this should accelerate in 2022. If we look now more precisely what's happening in China, we have to, concerning 5G, we have to point out that there's been a massive investment in wireless 5G in China. Indeed, more than 20 billion euro has been spent in 5G in 2020, and 23 billion expected to have been invested in 2021. This is 4 more times compared to the 5 billion euro invested in 2019, so it's really accelerating. The number of base stations was multiplied by 4 in 2020, and you see players by players the total expenditure, 37 billion for China Mobile, 32.3 billion for China Unicom, and China Telecom 32.3 billion. There is here co-investment also part with China. It's a cross investment, I would say. The base station, you see also on the right part of this slide, the acceleration in terms of 5G based base station with a huge growth in 2021. Japan is today presenting a robust 5G investment. despite the late launch, as I was saying, in Japan, this should not be mentioned in the coming month. Indeed, there has been a huge acceleration and the replacement acceleration of base station toward 5G. You can see here the 5G base station and 5G coverage in terms of percentage of population in Japan. So it is expected at the end of 2022, 70% of the population coverage in Japan. Of course, the fuel of those 5G deployment is the spectrum assignment. You have here a quite precise mapping of a national spectrum in the C-band in Asia Pacific region. Indeed, 3.3, 4.2, and 3.5 GHz is the most favored spectrum band for 5G in the APAC region. So I won't comment in the detail here, but you have in green the current licensed spectrum, the shared spectrum also, which is one of the particularity happening in China. There is some test and trial also, of course, already done concerning India. And you have in blue what would be the auction planned or also in some countries, and even what we call the considering auction that could be taken in red of this. So that was basically what I wanted to share with you concerning 5G deployment in APAC region. So I will be happy to take some question at the end of my presentation, so you can prepare this. And now I will shift to the second subject of this webinar. Here I will talk on the IoT deployment in the APAC region. As an introduction, it is well to remind that today many technologies are designed when we are talking about IoT. All those technologies have to obey the IoT requirements that are low energy consumption, long range, and low cost. As you know, it involves millions of objects. Main technologies here consider are for end-to-end communication. It means between the object and the internet. You see the different technology, the different performances on those multiply technology. We have here 5 technology being listed: the Sigfox, the LoRa, the LTE0, LTE-M, and also narrowband IoT being listed here in this table. One particularity for the telcos based in Asia Pacific, it is to say that they have started to take position on technology, sometimes on multiple technology, like you can see here with the example of the technological choice of players such as China Mobile, Docomo, SoftBank, SK, or Telstra. There is some existing real-life use case when we are looking at narrowband IoT and LTE-M deployment in Asia Pacific. here the pilots and existing solution. Utilities first remain the main priority of the telcos in mobile IoT deployment in the region. Narrowband IoT in particular has been tested by operators for smart metering. In particular, we had the example of water metering by China Mobile, water and gas meters by China Telecom. Also, you have also a smart city use case. Narrowband IoT has been tested also for street light management. Agriculture also is one of the main vertical addressed in Asia Pacific. We have an example of narrowband IoT used in Malaysia with Maxis for to monitor compost and an irrigation system. Public safety is also on the list of those use cases. KDDI is providing connectivity for weather condition tracking on the Fuji Mount station, and of course security is one of the also vertical address with the example of connected smart locks by Singtel using narrowband IoT, for example. So those deployments by large MNOs of the region puts some credibility on IoT market, we believe. Of course, the sustainability thematic is at the core also of the IoT specification and the choice of those MNO. And there is current technical issues regarding rollout. Of course, the issue in terms of roaming is one of those for considering a massive IoT rollout. You can see here on the map the positioning of the real use case using narrowband IoT and LTE-M in several parts of Asia Pacific. If we look at the market value chain, well, no surprise to say that IoT market value chain is very fragmented. There is a lack of solid coherence, and this could be changed and rationalized, we believe, with the main type of vendors in the years to come. You see some key players by segment in Asia Pacific on the different parts of the value chain, from the sensor devices to the IoT integration, the platform, the connectivity provider, the gateways, the module. There is basically three types of players: module manufacturers, communication providers, and integrators being there. What are the overview of main market players in this in APAC region? Well, is the main MNOs, I would say, communicating in terms of active SIM card base and related revenues. We see the communication of a player like China Mobile, for example. They claim to reach 830 million of IoT connection. A player like Telstra is communicating of more than 4 million IoT SIMs being there, and 270 million IoT connection being there. China Unicom also is communicating, but others like Docomo are no longer communicating in IoT data. So this is has to be precise. We can we can say that IoT has become an important business for operator. Looking at the number of connection, maybe less at the value or the business value, but the number of connection is today quite important for especially the top leading players by number of IoT connection we are mentioning here in terms of million connection. Of course, players like China Mobile or China Unicom are on the top of this list, but we can mention also Telstra in the region with 4 million IoT connection being also in this list. So China is by far leading this ranking with these two telcos, China Mobile and China Unicom. Despite the pandemic crisis, we can say that IoT market is enjoying a tremendous growth. First point. The second point is that Asia Pacific is really leading in volume by far. We expect by 2030 the IoT market will top 20 billion objects. This is rising from 5.6 billion in 2020, and we believe an average growth rate of nearly 14% on the 10 years to come. We believe that Asia Pacific will lead the way on the decade to come, reaching 12 billion by 2030. This will then represent nearly 60% of the global market in volume, and with average growth of 15% during this period. And no surprise saying that these gains will mainly come from China, like China Mobile has reported nearly 900 million IoT customers in 2020. The growth of IoT market per vertical will be quite disparate, we believe. On the first part, on the left part, you have here the breakdown of IoT market by verticals and the top 7 market for 2020 to 2030. You see that consumer smart home will be the top vertical market. We expect that this will reach 5 billion objects in 2030. Smart city will follow with 2.3 billion in terms of smart city in 2030. Despite the slowdown because of the global pandemic, we believe that logistics should be recovered and being present here on the ranking. And then we have consumer electronics, including the GPS, the e-readers, connected photo cameras, should experience a slight average increase. Then you have other breakdown of IoT market by vertical. With the other verticals, we can point out here that healthcare should be on the top of those other verticals also for the 10 years to come. Finally, we can't point out here what will be the drivers and barriers to those IoT vertical market. The driver first is the customer benefit. You can save some cost using IoT, and we see high customer satisfaction also when it is used. The solution are mostly based on well-deployed technology and very mature technology. We have mentioned LTE or NB-IoT, for example, and those technology are part of the internet, SMS, or even GPRS. We have some public policies and regulation adopted in some verticals that will drive IoT adoption. There is the e-call obligation in automotive industry. There is also all the application in smart grid and smart metering project. And we can point out also the telco involvement in this market that gives some credibility also on this IoT ecosystem. What are the barriers? Well, there has been an impact of the COVID-19 crisis. Some vertical, such as the logistic, transportation, or manufacturing, have been impacted, of course, by this crisis. And today, IoT investment are now at the first row for the first priority for those companies. There's still space to educate also the market on the benefit of IoT application. There is still an issue with cost. Of course, there is a cost of installation of some sensors. Like other part of the industry, of course, there has been some cyber attack quite popular, and this kind of fragilize also the adoption of IoT systems. There's still improvement required for key applications, such as autonomy, the question of network coverage, or short latency, of course. And the IoT market fragmentation, let's hope it will consolidate, because there is a numerous technology and players, and this can be complex in both of technical integration and supplier identification. So that was my presentation on the IoT market. This is part, of course, of EDAT knowledge, and this is also our market intelligence covering 6 collections from fiber to wireless 5G to smart verticals and IoT, the future of digital content and emerging tech, and also digital economy. So it was a true pleasure for me to present these 2 panorama for 5G and APAC. We are the part 1 of our innovation report for the FTTH Council Asia Pacific. And now I will be very happy to answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roland. It was really a pleasure for actually enjoying your report. So now we will be actually moving to the question and discussion session. So to the audience, if you have any queries or questions regarding the presentation or the report, you can just type them in the questions box, and we will try our best to discuss that. And also in the handouts, the report itself is available for download in a booklet form. You can just go to the handouts part and download that for your future use. And so let's go to the question and answer session. So let's see. The first question to Roland is that since the COVID, we had a very great kind of shock to the entire industry and some of the value chains of this industry. So how that actually slows down the 5G development deployment as a whole, do you think?
Well, we all know that during the lockdown of COVID-19, people mobility was nearly close to zero. So everybody was locked at home, I would say. And then the players, their priority in investment. Today, we know that the main investment for many telco is fiber to the home and 5G. So some of them really decided to put the priority during this COVID crisis to fiber to the home more than 5G. I think because that was the demand of the people being on teleworking, teleeducation, telemedicine, and all the stuff. Then now that the mobility, let's hope, will come back, then 5G will be again on top of the list of the players. So it was more linked, I think, to the circumstance and the way of life during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, so we have seen both in 5G and IoT penetration. In terms of penetration, it's more things are happening in China, USA, South Korea, and Japan. So is there any kind of specific reasons you can mention behind this development?
Well, there is also work, I would say, coming from the MNO to convince on the real innovation linked to 5G. Today, the main application used for 5G is around eMBB and better connection compared to 4G. So I think there is still a need, and it will come, we believe, in the years to come, innovation linked to 5G, especially attract to low latency, to convince with new application to the players to shift from 4G to 5G. So this is one reason. The other reason is also the way of commercialization of 5G. Of course, the pricing plan, the low pricing plan is key to have adoption in 5G, especially in emerging countries, and also the availability at low price of 5G handsets and smartphone is key for starting ecosystem. So this is the main challenge, I believe, in the countries where 5G is not so well adopted: innovation and commercialization strategy.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I've got a question from our audience. The question is, how will the 5G growth impact on the fiber demand? Is the present fiber demand related to the 5G construction? What is your opinion on this?
Well, we are all convinced that 5G will require fiber for mobile backhaul and for front haul. The point is that for the moment, most of the time, as I was saying, 5G is deployed on non-standalone architecture. It means that the current 4G core network is used for 5G. So there is already linked point-to-point most of the time to base station for those base station 4G. So we believe that fiber for 5G will come when we will see a densification of base station. It means that we will have more proximity of base station toward the consumer. This could come from China, for example, where there is use plan of base station being deployed, and then for all the new base station, fiber will be the most evident choice from the telco. And of course, also when millimeter waves started to be deployed, this is the physics. So the range of coverage will be smaller than current 3.5 gigahertz. So here you will need a large density of base station, and this at this time could drive fiber for mobile backhaul and front haul.
Okay, so I think we came to a good point of discussion. So we often heard the debate about whether the future will be 5G or fiber. So we know from our lots of discussions and happenings in the industry that both are actually complement to each other. So how would you elaborate this point for discussion's sake?
Of course, this is a real complementary solution, and 5G is allowing, especially millimeter waves, a very up-to-date fixed wireless solution. And this could be a solution used waiting for fiber to the home. I had the pleasure to visit a few weeks ago the NBN in Australia. And over there, the NBN also announced, at the beginning, we all know that the NBN was a full fiber network, but today they are looking at several technology, and they are looking especially for the most suburban and rural areas to deploy fixed wireless access, waiting for fiber. They are saying that the end goal will be fiber to the home, but today those fixed wireless access can allow several hundreds of megabit or several hundreds of tens of megabit, and this could be with 5G a good solution waiting for fiber. So I completely agree with you, Rosafi. We see really complementary in terms of tempo between 5G fixed wireless access and fiber to the home.
Okay, so that's a good point. Okay, so another question is from another audience is that do you have any idea on the major strategic moves adopted by China, Korea, and Japan to have their success stories in 5G and IoT? If you have any knowledge on this strategic.
China and South Korea.
Yeah, China, South Korea, and Japan. So their telco regulation, or from a operator perspective, what was their strategic moves which actually kept them as pioneer of 5G and IoT?
Well, on the 5G, we can point out also the subsidies of handset and pricing plans occurring in South Korea. This has been also an explanation of the success of 5G. And for the other countries you have mentioned, China and Japan, I think because of the mobile bandwidth consumption exploding in those countries, there has been an emergency for the telcos to deploy 5G to absorb the peak of mobile bandwidth that was not that 4G was not able to sustain. So this has been a main explanation. And for IoT, we believe that IoT is really linked to industrial application. And this is the main choice for using IoT for the three countries mentioned there. We have seen application in mining, in port, also logistic, in all the manufacturing plants. So this is linked also to the to have a more productive industry using IoT in the countries we are mentioning.
I see. Okay, that's good. Okay. Another question. So, is 5G necessarily to be available to all the other countries, all the countries anytime soon in the Asia Pacific, and especially like in the emerging markets in Asia Pacific? What is your opinion on this?
Well, I have mentioned that in 2023, all the APAC countries should be involved in 5G, with the example of Pakistan and Bangladesh. So there will be some other candidates, but like it is the case in India, the pricing plans have to be adapted also to the possibility of the population. So this is not only a matter of deployment, but also it's a matter to have a low-cost handset available. This should come in the years to come more and more. I would say it's always the same with the launch of technology, then there is a decrease of the handset cost. But this 5G rollout on the first waves should be more limited to the big cities, more than to rural areas, we believe. So it will be step by step, and it will be linked, I believe, to the lower cost, especially on the handset, to be available to the people in emerging countries.
Okay, and I think another point is that to cater the 5G bandwidth, humongous bandwidth availability, I think the local content would actually contribute a lot rather than international contents. What is your opinion?
It is sure that the local content in the local language, the video content being available, especially for young generation, is key as a driver. So this 5G is really embedded with this eMBB and streaming. So this will be a clear more quality of usage for the consumers that want to have access to local content. So this is really key, completely in line with you. And there is especially local content industry, of course, in the APAC region, not to mention the Bollywood industry. So there is here some traction for 5G for sure.
Okay. I can see some questions coming on the fiber side. One audience, Anubhav Singh, actually mentioned on the APAC lagging behind on the FTTH deployment, and another audience, Frank, is another fiber global deployment, which is the leading country. But I think today let's keep it only 5G and IoT. And since we are having a pure FTTH and FTTH based webinar coming up, the information is already on the screen on 4th of October. So I think it would be more relative to discuss this on that webinar itself. So I think we can conclude now, because we are not seeing any more questions coming in. So great. Since the countries in APAC are also opening up, we will very soon be seeing you in some parts of Asia Pacific physically. And until then, please stay tuned through our social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We will share the already shared the booklet with you guys, and after the presentation finishes, the video will be shared with everyone as well. So till then, I'd like to thank Roland for your time And to the all audience, thanks for your time as well. We will definitely catch up very soon in our next webinar. So thank you, everyone. With this, I'd like to conclude today's webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Osafi.